If somebody was a bit more experienced, what's the first thing I'm probably going to work on is they're teaching too much content. They're under the mistaken impression that the person who teaches the most gets the customer, gets the appointment, and the person who teaches the most does not get the appointment. The person who teaches the most leaves their audience overwhelmed, scared, and confused, and a person who's overwhelmed, scared, and confused doesn't make decisions. They freeze. They just freeze. And so if you're hearing things at the end of your presentation like, I want to do this, but this isn't a good time, or I want to do this, can I go home and think about it and call you back? Never. Like, they're stalling. They're just using stall tactics. They're being polite, but what they're saying is, I'm overwhelmed and scared and confused. When you teach less, you actually leave the audience feeling confident and empowered. And a person who's feeling confident and empowered will make decisions. They will move forward with you. They will not only set the appointment, they'll show up for the appointment, and they'll be ready at that appointment to make the decision to become a client. And that all starts with you teaching less.
This is the Business of Advice podcast, where we help good advisors become great business owners. Today's guest is a longtime friend and has done a lot of work with us here at Advisors Excel, Pat Quinn. Pat has entertained, inspired, educated audiences all over the world for over 30 years, consulted with a lot of speakers, pastors, business leaders, and has been really key with our advisors here and just helping them be as great as they can be. Going back, it's probably been 4 or 5 years now we've been working together. So welcome back to Advisors Excel and to the Business of Advice podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I don't know why we waited so long to do this, but we got you in the office. So this is one of those live ones. So excited to have you here, and just so much value you've added over the years, and excited to jump in and just share. I think for obviously advisors, which is primarily what listens to this, but I think anyone who's in front of an audience, I was recording another podcast with a mutual friend, Scott Donnell, and he was just talking about how much you've impacted his presentation. So excited for that.
Yeah, the ability to communicate effectively and efficiently just serves people in every aspect of their life. It helps advisors, but it helps anybody with a message or a cause as well.
Yeah, well, you're as good as it comes when it comes to that. So maybe just to set the stage, not really how you started off, right? Started off in education, but share kind of your journey and how you become such an expert in this area of like speaking and influence.
Yeah, I actually didn't get my start as a professional speaker. I got my start as a professional magician and worked magic for 10 years professionally. After that, I decided I needed to get a real job. My mom told me I needed to get a real job, I guess. And I became a public school teacher. I taught high school math for 12 years, but during that time, I picked up an advanced degree in how adults learn. And so I really bring two things to the table when I'm helping somebody with their communication skills. The first is a little bit of stagecraft from my years of doing magic, but the second is a real understanding of how an audience, whether that's an audience of one sitting across a table like this, or an audience of 30 people sitting in a room with you, how do they listen, learn, and remember everything that you say? How do they respond to it? I've been fortunate over the last 10 or 15 years to work with some of the greatest speakers in the world, but most of the people that I coach, most of the people that I help are not professional speakers. Most of the people that I help wouldn't even call themselves speakers. They'd call themselves business owners. They'd call themselves people who have a message or a cause. And I help them get more clients, get more customers, get more impact in the world by being better communicators. And one of the words that we throw into this is high converting. When somebody hears you speak, I want them to take the next step that you want them to take, whatever that next step is. Sometimes that's to come into my office and have an appointment. Sometimes it's to donate money to my cause. Sometimes it's to buy a product or service. Sometimes it's just to change the way you think or the way you behave. But what percentage of the audience actually takes that next step? That's something that I've specialized in, I've studied, and we really have best practices around that can serve a lot of people.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump into a few of those too. This is kind of maybe a tough question to answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway. And I'll ask it specifically like financial advisors, but I think it applies to a lot of people that will listen to this. If you were starting to work with someone new, and let's say they are doing live events, a lot of our advisors are doing live events, could be dinner seminars, educational classes, client events, those types of things. Where would you start with the advisor? Like what? Maybe a different way to ask that, or what are some of the common mistakes that you see them making that you can fix quickly?
Yeah, the biggest change anybody who's communicating to a group can make is the first 5 minutes. It's where you get the most bang for your buck when it comes to changing your presentation. So many advisors and so many speakers begin their presentation by reading their resume to the audience. And the purpose of the opening 5 minutes is actually to connect. And so there's a couple things we look to do in the first 5 minutes. We look to tell a story that's personal. Oh, can I tell a client story? Well, you can, but you don't want them to connect with a client. You want them to connect with you.
Yeah.
Can I tell a story I read in Chicken Soup for the Soul? Nope, that doesn't help them connect with you. You want to tell a personal story. And then the second thing you want to do is make sure that your language is the language of your audience, not the language of you. And so in the case that we're talking about here, it's a financial advisor talking who thinks about retirement planning and asset management in a whole different language than the consumer thinks about it. And so if they come out in their first 5 minutes and they're throwing around words like asset allocation, required minimum distributions, the audience is going to glaze over and never connect. If they come out in the first 5 minutes and they say, how long do I have to work? Do I have enough money? And is my money going to last? And by the way, what's going to happen when I die? Like that's the common language of somebody who doesn't work in the financial services industry. That's how they're thinking about it. And the game really is, can you change your language to the language of the consumer and get out of the expert language that you think in every single day in your office? And the person who does that the best, the person who connects around the language the best, is the person who's going to get the most appointments out of the presentation or the most customers out of the presentation. It is a language game. And you'll know you're doing it right if the audience is nodding their heads and leaning in, because you're describing the problem in the way that they think about it. If you're using your words, they'll be leaning back in their chairs, they'll be folding their arms, closing off to you, and you'll see that they've closed off, and you won't figure out why, because you're clearly the smartest person in the room. They should listen to you, but the smartest person in the room doesn't get the sale. The person who connects the best gets the sale, and that is a language game. And we get the most bang for the buck by putting the right story up front, a personal story that connects with the audience around the language of the problem.
Do you have an example? Maybe, I know you've worked with a lot of our advisors. Is there one that comes to mind? You don't have to share their name, but just like to give people an example, what you mean by that personal story.
A great example is what we call an analogy story. So sometimes you're telling a personal story of you struggling to plan for retirement, and that's great. Not every advisor has a story like that, because a lot of them have a financial IQ that's higher than most people. And so what we tell is, what are the emotions in the room? What is the common person who's coming to a dinner seminar or an educational seminar or a lunch and learn or whatever presentation you're holding? What are their emotions right now? They're probably scared. They're probably a little bit overwhelmed with the amount of information available, because free information is everywhere. And they're probably a little bit lost. So think of a time in your life when you were lost, when you were scared, or when you were overwhelmed. You know, we went to Disney World. We took our kids to Disney World, and I remember I was like 10th in line to go through the turnstiles, and I saw 10 people in front of me. The person went through the turnstile and got handed a map. And then 9 people in front of me, the person went through the turnstile and got handed a map. And 8 people in front of me, the person went through the turnstile and got handed a map. And when I got up there, I went through the turnstile, and they didn't give me a map. And I said, where's the map? And they said, oh, we're out of maps. We don't have any more maps left. And so I went into Disney World, this giant place, and I didn't have a map. And I saw all the people with maps. They had their head down. They knew exactly where they were going. And I kind of wandered around the whole day. And I talked to people on the monorail on the way out of there at the end. And there were some people who went on 22 rides and had the time of their life. And that whole day, we went on 4 rides, and we left really frustrated because we didn't have a map. And you tell that story. It's a personal story. It's a true story that happened to me. And then you just turn to the audience and you say, you know, there's a lot of you right now who feel that way about retirement. Like you look around and it feels like everybody else has a map, but you don't have a map. And you talk to other people and they're having the time of their lives. They're like going on 22 different rides. And you're kind of wandering around like you're lost because you just don't have a map. Well, you're in the right place tonight. Because tonight I'm going to show you a map to a great retirement. Tonight I'm going to show you step by step how you can have the time of your life and go on every ride you want to go on. And it all starts with you finding the right map. Now, that's a story that really isn't about retirement. It's a story about emotions. It's a story about loss, overwhelm, and confusion. And, you know, everybody has one. You just have to pull out the right personal story and then relate it to the emotions the audience is feeling. And you're going to connect around that story. When you're done, people are going to come up and ask you about the story. We have a name for those people who come up and ask you about your opening story after the presentation. The name for those people is clients
Yeah.
because that's what they are. They're
Yep.
engaging with you after the presentation, so they're going to become clients. So it doesn't have to be a story about you struggling with finances or you struggling with retirement. It really is a story that connects on the emotions that the audience is feeling.
Yeah. Well, people probably, as they listen to this, are going to see why I say you're so good at this. It's a great example of that. Maybe I'll ask just a little more detail around this. You talked about the being able to translate from the language you speak into the what the consumer speaks in. And even this morning, you were training some of our team here, and you walked through and I've heard advisors say this, and I've seen it in their presentations where they talk about accumulation phase or the protection or distribution phase, and just I thought you had some great language around that. But any other examples like that you see common mistakes that advisors would make where they don't think about the language they're using enough?
Yeah, that's a great example. They talk about you're in the accumulation phase, the preservation phase, or the distribution phase. And nobody who doesn't work in a financial advisor world ever thinks like that. They
Yeah.
think I'm working.
Yep.
I'm close to retiring, or I'm not working anymore. And that's the language that they use. I mean, you think about, your financial advisors often refer to 2008, and they're like, "Oh, you remember 2008?" And a lot of people are like, "Yeah, that's the year my daughter was born. Why do you bring that up?" 2008 might have been a landmark event in a lot of financial advisors' lives, and in most people's lives, it was maybe the year their kids graduated or the year they had a child born or something. It's just there's a different way to refer to that.
Yeah.
Like instead of saying if we have another 2008, you could say if there's ever a time when the market loses a lot of its value or when the stock market takes a deep dive, like that, you don't want to be here when that happens. And so I think you just have to, and it's great to try out your presentation in front of people who do not work in your office. Because when we put together a group of speakers, we often have one health coach and one person who's coaching about this and one person who's coaching about that and one financial advisor. And they try that stuff and everybody's just like, what are you talking about? In a room full of financial advisors, everybody would be like, oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. So for everybody who's watching this, just to think about trying your presentation out in people who don't work in your industry all the time, because it's hard for you when you work in the industry to catch those things, the industry speak, as it were. So try it out in front of different people, and I think you'll have a better opportunity for people to say, I have no idea what you're talking about. You can keep talking about that, but I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's one of the things I've just seen you help our advisors do so much is, I don't know if simplify is the right, but it probably is the right way to describe it, of just really being thoughtful about the words you're using, how you're communicating it, putting it into terms that people are going to understand.
Yeah, Robert Cialdini calls this pacing before leading. Everybody wants to be a leader. We all want to lead the audience to a better future and a better success. But no one will follow you. No, you can't lead anybody until you pace them. What's pacing? Pacing is actually throwing your arm around somebody and walking with them for a while and saying, I get it. This kind of sucks. This is kind of scary right now. A lot of speakers want to rush through that part of their presentation, like rush through the painful part of their presentation and get to the good stuff because I got so much to teach you tonight. I encourage you just to soak in that. Soak in the fear, soak in the overwhelm, soak in the fact that if I Google retirement planning, I'll get 1,600 YouTube videos and I can't watch them all and I don't know which one's right. And there's 3 different ones telling me to do 3 different ththings. And my brother-in-law is telling me something else. It's not a lack of information that they have. It's an overwhelm of information that they have. It's not that, they don't have somebody to give them help. They don't know if that person who's helping them really understands their problem. So I always say, spend less time trying to get the audience to understand you and more time making sure the audience knows that you understand them. 50% of the audience will make the decision whether or not to work with you in the first 5 minutes of your presentation. And that's based on whether or not you connected around the language of the problem. And everybody watching this has done it. You've seen a speaker, and in the first 5 minutes, you're like, I don't know what they offer, but I'm going to work with this person.
Yep.
And we all have seen speakers who in the first 5 minutes of their presentation, we sit back and we say, this isn't a good fit. It's just something that doesn't feel like a good fit. They're not connecting around the problem. And that is a language game. You have to pay attention to the language and speak in the language of the consumer.
You talked about the idea of you want to get to the good stuff, educate them. So this transition, we talked a little bit about the importance of that opening story, that opening connection point. I think the second big thing that you've worked with us, with our advisors on, but also I think is a big topic is just like, how much content, and then what's the structure look like after that? So just any wisdom you want to share around that.
Yeah, you asked me what I would change in a new advisor or
Yeah.
somebody new to presenting, and it's definitely working on the first 5 minutes. If somebody was a bit more experienced, what's the first thing I'm probably going to work on is they're teaching too much content. They're under the mistaken impression that the person who teaches the most gets the customer, gets the appointment, and the person who teaches the most does not get the appointment. The person who teaches the most leaves their audience overwhelmed, scared, and confused, and a person who's overwhelmed, scared, and confused doesn't make decisions. They freeze. They just freeze. And so if you're hearing things at the end of your presentation like, I want to do this, but this isn't a good time, or I want to do this, can I go home and think about it and call you back? Never. Like, they're stalling. They're just using stall tactics. They're being polite, but what they're saying is, I'm overwhelmed and scared and confused. When you teach less, you actually leave the audience feeling confident and empowered. And a person who's feeling confident and empowered will make decisions. They will move forward with you. They will not only set the appointment, they'll show up for the appointment, and they'll be ready at that appointment to make the decision to become a client. And that all starts with you teaching less. And so signs that you're teaching too much in your presentation, sign number 1, you talk fast during the entire time. You never take a breath because you don't have time to take a breath. If you take a breath, the presentation's going to be too long. Sign number 2, you apologize early in your presentation. And you've heard advisors do this. They apologize early in the presentation. Sorry, this is a lot to go through tonight, but just bear with me. We'll get through it all. Like, you know you're doing it wrong to the point that you're apologizing for doing it wrong, but you're not changing it. I'm watching that screaming in the back, like, change.
Yeah.
Like, you're apologizing for doing, like, it's weird. And then the third sign is that you have, too many slides. If you have 100 slides, I see presentations with 150 slides. Like, it does not take more than 30 or 40 slides to do this. And if you have too many slides, and a lot of people apologize for it. Oh, I've got a lot of slides to get through tonight. Like, again, you're apologizing for doing it wrong, but you didn't change it. And that to me is, just change it. You can make this better. If you teach less, a few things will happen. You'll be able to slow down your presentation. When you slow down your presentation, you communicate confidence and you communicate calm. One of the things you're selling is peace of mind. Peace of mind that this is taken care of. Peace of mind that if something happens to you, they're going to be okay. And the way that you communicate peace of mind and confidence and calm is not to talk frantically and be moving all over the place and waving your hands. It's to slow yourself. Slow your movement. Slow your heart rate. Slow your voice. But if you've got too many words, you've got too much content, you got to get through it because you only have this long in an educational presentation. A dinner presentation, it's worse because they can smell the steaks cooking. You got this clock ticking and you got to rush the whole thing. And that hurts your conversion rate. It leaves the audience feeling frantic at the end instead of confident and calm at the end. But if you cut your content, you will have time to slow down. You'll have time to let the emotional points that you're going to hit and the teaching points that you hit sink in. Let the audience process it, see the need for you, and you'll get conversion rates into appointments like you've never seen before.
Yeah, I actually was at an event and saw someone. I mean, they apologized in advance that I'm probably not going to make it through all these slides, and then started flipping through
these aren't important. Don't worry about this. These aren't important.
I was just sitting in the back thinking about you when I saw that. So I'm like,
I was at an event last week. I saw a great 40-minute presentation. The problem was he only had 30 minutes to give it, so he never took a breath during the whole time because he knew he had too many words for the time that he had, and nobody could process it. Nobody emotionally came along for the ride, and at the end, nobody took action because you're just sitting there like, wow, that was really fast. But it doesn't land with you. You're just left feeling overwhelmed.
One of the things that I think you have helped our advisors do, and so I'm going to ask this in a kind of general way, and it goes to what you were just talking about there, is like a lot of times they do these events so often that I think it just becomes like habit and routine, and I tell them all the time, you're spending a lot of money. It's one of your primary lead generation sources, and you show up and wing it, or just go through the motions versus preparing. Just any tips that you have around, like, I don't want to say, here's what I think you've helped our advisors do, really tackle these like a pro, right? Like prepare, like be ready, like put some thought into what you're doing, but just any tips on like preparation to do a better job around this,
Yeah.
and just how important that is, maybe.
It is. I talk to advisors and other speakers who say, every time I do this, it's different. I just kind of wing it when I get up there. And my response to that is, yeah, that's why you don't get any better. Because
Yeah.
every time you're giving a presentation for the first time. Like you were a first timer. I've been doing this for 30 years. Yeah, but you change it every time. You're a first timer. Where if you give the same presentation, the same presentation every time, you can actually dial it in. You can dial in your timing. You can pick the stories that resonate the most and get rid of the stories that don't. And it does require a discipline. And so you call it preparation. I actually think most of the work happens right after you give a presentation. The first thing you should do is write down what felt right to you and what felt out of character for you, because authenticity and transparency are so important that I never want you to do anything that doesn't feel like congruent with who you are and what you want to be when you're up there. Second thing I want you to do is to either use video. And so a lot of people are filming themselves. And they say, oh, I should watch those videos, but I don't like to watch the videos. I don't even want you to video yourself. I want you to turn the camera around and film the audience instead. And you will be able to hear your voice, but you'll be able to watch the audience. And you will learn more by watching the audience for 5 minutes than you'll learn by watching yourself for 45 minutes. You'll learn the best parts of your presentation and the worst parts of your presentation, the most engaging parts of your presentation and the least engaging parts of the presentation. Then the third thing I want you to do is, if you have somebody else in the room, and usually you have a marketing person or somebody else in the room, sometimes your spouse might be in the room, and if you don't give them any instructions, then when you finish and you go to the back of the room and say, how did I do? They're going to shake your hand and say, nice message, Pastor.
Yep.
And they have to say it. You're kind of their boss. Or if they're your spouse, you're going to go home with them. So they'll be like, you did great. I loved it. I thought it was great. Same as it was the last 10 times I watched it. Here's what I want you to do. Go to that very same person before your presentation and tell them, after the presentation, I'm going to come back here and I'm only going to ask you 2 questions. Number 1, which parts of my presentation was the audience most engaged? And number 2, which parts of my presentation was the audience least engaged? They are going to watch your presentation with a whole different set of eyes.
Yeah.
They're not even going to be looking at you. They're going to be looking over the shoulders of everybody in the audience. They're going to see when they're taking notes and when they're not taking notes. They're going to take pictures when they see people leaning over to their spouses and saying, "We should do this. We should do this." Like they're going to watch it with a whole different set of eyes. And when you go back to them after that presentation and say, "How did I do?" They're not going to say, "Nice job." They're going to say, "Boy, that one story that you told, everybody was with you." And then that one part where you had that one slide with all those words on it, like you lost them there. They were all checking their phones to see what time it was during that one. Like they're going to give you such good data and such good feedback on that. And then you have to be willing to accept it and make some small changes. So I think the work actually happens between the seminars more than before the first one. You can design a presentation alone in your house for a year, and it'll get a little bit better. But the first time you give it in front of live people and pay attention to the audience, it's going to get so much better, so much faster. And that's what I love about somebody who's giving presentations quite a bit. They can dial it in.
Yep.
So if you're giving them on Tuesdays and Thursdays 3 weeks in a row, like you should be dialing that thing in, getting those stories down, throwing out the story that doesn't work and trying a different story there. You can test things, modify things, and improve things. And it's just going to get better and better. And you'll see it in your conversion rate, and not just your conversion rate into appointments that night. You're also going to see, as you dial this in, a lower no-show rate. So we know a certain percentage of people who sign up for appointments are going to cancel the next day or just no-show. And then we'll also see a higher conversion of first appointment into clients. So there are a lot of people who will show up for first appointments and don't become clients. But if you design the presentation correctly, you'll see all 3 of those numbers go up. The percent that book into appointments, the percent that show up for those appointments, and then the percent of first appointments that actually become clients.
I know I jumped ahead a little to talk about just preparation and being a pro, but going back to the idea of content, is there an ideal amount of content that they should have kind of in the meat of their presentation? Any rules that you would have around that?
Yeah, well, I think of it as time-based rather than content-based.
Okay.
So we like 3 topics. We like 3 or 4 topics at the most because that's what people can remember. That's why phone numbers are broken up into 3 digits and 4 digits. So because that's what people can remember.
Yep.
I want your content broken into topics. And then I think a good way to think about it is if I have 3 topics, I should spend 10 minutes on each topic. So when I'm thinking about my first topic, so a lot of people in their presentation, retirement income or where your income is going to come from during retirement is their first topic. I don't think about it from a content standpoint, because if I think about it from a content standpoint, I think I have to teach you everything I know about retirement income. Well, there's no way you can teach me everything you know. And by the way, you've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah.
If you would ever teach me everything you know, I'd be so scared and overwhelmed and confused, I would never make a decision. Instead, I think about it as time-based. In 10 minutes, how can I help someone the most? What one or two things could I teach them about retirement income that would help them the most? Now I'm taking a time-based approach, recognizing I can't teach you everything I know, recognizing that I have 10 minutes. So then we move on to our second topic. And if my second topic is taxes, paying less in taxes or something like that, I'm not going to teach you everything I know about taxes.
Yeah.
In 10 minutes, how could I help you the most? And when you take a time-based approach, I find that you stop thinking about, there's so much I could teach you. That wasn't the question. The question was, in 10 minutes, how could you help someone the most? And now you're just thinking about the one or two things that will move the needle the most for them, that will help them the most, that'll point out their gaps the most, that will show them what you do the most. And now you're taking a time-based approach rather than a content-based approach, which will stop the overwhelm and get you putting the right amount of information into the middle part of your presentation.
That's good. Okay, let's move. So open, content, close. Obviously a really important part that I think sometimes people don't maybe put enough focus or attention into is like, how are you going to close? Obviously with the intent, we'll speak to our advisors. Their goal ultimately is to get someone to come in for an appointment. So just any wisdom around the close.
Well, it's two parts to this. One is tactical techniques that you use to get people to say yes. But the thing we have to address first is what's going on in your head when you get to this part of your presentation. As we call it the red line. The red line is when you cross from content into offer. And the red line just messes with your head. The red line has people thinking things like, in the content section, I'm teaching, I'm a good person. In the offer, I'm selling, I'm a bad person. And you never probably explicitly say it like that, but I can tell by your body language that something happened. I can tell by the sweat that something happened. I can tell by the fact that you're talking faster now, and you've suddenly using ums and ahs that weren't in there earlier in your presentation. I can tell by the fact that you're rushing this, that you just want to get out of here. You feel like what you're doing is wrong, or you're feeling like what you're doing is the audience doesn't like it, and you've got something going on up here. And so here's how I like to think about it and how we work with people who get really nervous at the red line. By the way, it's not unusual. It's very normal for the human body to react at this point. When you're in your content section teaching, you're helping people a little. When you're in your offer, you're helping people a lot. What I'm saying there is there's a limit to how much you can help people in 45 minutes. There's a limit to how much you can help people at your seminars. But if they become clients, there's really no limit to how you can change their lives. You can change their financial futures. You can change it for generations to come. And if you think about it as, in my content, I'm just helping a little. In my offer, I'm helping them a lot. You're going to do it more confidently. You're going to do it slower. And you're going to stop feeling guilty for doing it. Because the way that you really help people a lot is when you get them in for an appointment.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't feel bad about that. This is how you help people. This is how you serve people. And in my content, I can teach, but I'm only helping a little. If I can get you into my office and I can start working with you over the course of the next few years, I can change your family for generations to come. I can change how your retirement is. I can change how you sleep at night. I can change your health. I can improve your heart health. I can improve your stress. I can improve so many things if I could get you in for an appointment. And now I'm not going to feel guilty about it. Now I'm not going to rush it because I know this is important. Now, tactically, there's things that you can do to improve your offer. And the number one thing that advisors can do is change the name of the first appointment. So many advisors either haven't named it and just call it the appointment or the complimentary appointment or the free appointment. The other ones who do name them have terrible names. The research shows that the highest converting names are results-based titles. What are the results of working with you long-term? And so some advisors call this a discovery appointment. That's not what people want. People do not want to be discovered. Some people call it the second opinion appointment, which makes everybody think about cancer. It's not what they want. You might as well just call it the colonoscopy appointment if you're going to do that. What is the result of working with you? The result of working with you might be freedom of choices. The result of working with you might be a great retirement. The result of working with you might be peace of mind. And advisors who've switched from discovery appointment to a peace of mind appointment find that instantly whether they're doing educational seminars, whether they're doing dinner seminars, whether they're doing lunch and learns, or whatever format they're in, instantly they see a 10% increase in the number of people who claim appointments and then the number of people who show up at those appointments, because they didn't get them thinking about discovery or the process that we're going to go through. They got them thinking about, what is the end result of this? The end result of this is peace of mind. The end result of this is a plan that I'm confident in. It's confidence in retirement. And so I want you to think about a results-based title and rather than a process-based title. And there's a lot of people who have process-based titles. It's a roadmap appointment. It's a discovery appointment. It's a here's all the paperwork you're going to have to do appointment. Well, they don't actually use that one. But that's some of the titles are so bad you might as well call it the paperwork appointment. What's the result of working with you? Change that to a results-based, forward-looking title, and I think you're going to see a difference in your results right away.
You know, something I've heard from our advisors, very specific to like right now, or let's say over the last few months, is they're seeing a dip in people's schedule appointments or show up for them. And obviously, I think you would say there's probably a lot of things that go into that. But people that have been having success where maybe those results have come back a little bit. And just some of the conversations I've had with people is they do feel like the consumer maybe feels a little overwhelmed right now, just when you look at all the news and everything going on. Just anything you would change with maybe how you speak to those people during a time where obviously we've talked about them feeling overwhelmed, but I think people seem to sense or feel it a little bit more right now. So just anything you do in a time where maybe anxiety's even ratcheted up a level.
Yeah, there's a whole body of research on what's called VUCA, decision-making, volatile, uncertain times, causes people to make decisions differently. Joseph Marx actually has a Nobel Prize-winning paper in economics on how people make decisions during volatile, uncertain times. And since COVID and since, political things and economic things, we are in volatile, uncertain times. So a couple of things that advisors can do. The first is when you're talking about making a change, you want to focus first on the things that will stay the same. So if I'm trying to get you to, do something different, instead of saying, this is going to change everything, that's actually a terrible way to get people to make a decision. What you want to say is, here are the things that won't change. You're still going to be in control over your financial decisions. You're still going to be able to look at any move that we make beforehand. You're still going to put a little bit of money away every pay period, So we're going to meet, every quarter, and we'll go over this or what. Here are the things that won't change. Focus on the things that won't change. Now, here are the things that are going to change, and diminish the things that will change, and focus always first on the things that won't change, and people will be much more open to the change. And the second is something that we've just talked about before, is really how you are modulating your voice when you're talking about this. There is a lot of research that if your voice starts to go faster and your tone starts to go higher, you are actually communicating that you're panicking too. Like, this is so important to do. We have to do this right now. The market's been up and down in politics. Oh, that's just going crazy. And COVID, you don't know if that's going to come back. And it's like, okay, who's the one panicking here? Like, I do not want the person who's going to be writing my plan and who I'm going to put my future in their hands. Like, I do not want that person to be the frantic person. And so anything you can do to calm your voice, especially when we get to this tactical offer, to slow your pace, to slow the pace of your voice, to lower your tone if you have control of that, that's going to communicate confidence. That is going to communicate calm. And that is who we gravitate toward. We gravitate toward the calm and confident, not the person who's running around saying the sky is falling, the sky is falling.
Yeah, that's really good. Great advice and feedback. One of the things I told you, Scott Donald and I were talking a few hours before we recorded this, and I was reminded, I know you did some work with him, I was reminded of something you've taught, that so many things you've taught, I kind of forgot about this one, but he was talking about how short term, you want to provide value that they could go implement immediately, but long term, you want to structure it in a way where they can't imagine their life without you being that one providing value. Talk about just in a presentation, like how you demonstrate that.
Yeah, every presentation that converts high is a mix of short and long-term solutions. Short-term solutions are quick-hitting things that you can do. I just gave everybody the advice to turn the camera around and film the audience. That's a short-term solution. Next time you present, you could do that. Most people listening to this right now have already thought, I could do that. That would work. I get the credit for that. My credibility goes up. You haven't even tried it yet, and I'm already getting credibility. But along with that, you also need long-term solutions. You have to offer things, habits, systems, patterns that take a little bit more time, months or years to implement, and the results don't show up right away. Now, most financial advisors that I meet for the first time, their presentations are loaded with long-term solutions. You should invest like this over time, but there are no short-term solutions in their presentations. I really encourage advisors to add some short-term solutions, and they don't have to be, hard things to add. You might recommend a book. You might recommend a website. A lot of advisors, tell people to go to the Social Security website. You can type in your information and find out what your monthly check's going to be after you retire. You can do that today. It's absolutely free. And people are writing this down, and they may not even do it. But you're getting the credibility because you're giving them these resources, you're giving them these ideas, and they're like, wow, this person is really helpful. This person is really helpful. And then when they recommend the long-term solutions, they're things that are complicated enough that, making transfers and moving things like this, that they'd never try to do them on their own. They need help doing them. Who are they going to go to for that help? They're going to go through the person who gave them good advice on the short-term things. And so every great presentation that converts is a mix of long-term and short-term solutions. You want to look at your presentation and say, of the advice that I'm offering, of the strategies that I'm giving people, is mine a mix of short and long-term solutions? Because if you're missing one of them or the other, it's not going to convert nearly as high.
So 3 final topics. Appreciate that. 3 final topics I want to kind of ask you about here as far as presentations go. First would be, I'm going to say body language or posture when you're presenting, just recommendations on how, you've seen some who are almost frantic, let's say Chris Farley, they're moving all over the room and just a lot of energy. Others that maybe stand in one place a little bit more, but just any mix there that you see that works well.
Yeah, I don't want to change you or who you are. I want you to be authentically and transparently you. And I certainly coach people who are like a caged tiger at the zoo, who are just back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I coach other people who stand still most of the time in their presentation. And there's more than one right way to do this. What I would say in general is, if you're going to move with purpose. There should be a reason to your movement, and it shouldn't just be your nervous energy. So what are the reasons you'd want to move during a presentation? One reason, and I think one of the best reasons that you want to move during a presentation, is to create a contrast. Create a contrast, like earlier, in this conversation, I created a contrast between people who had a map and people who didn't have a map. And I could use the right side of the stage for people who didn't have a map, who only got to go on 3 rides and were lost most of the day, and people who did have a map over on the left side of the stage. And those people went on all the rides they wanted to, had the time of their life because they had a map. And then for the rest of my presentation, I can kind of talk about, some people are doing it this way. And they haven't really thought about when they're going to pay taxes on their investments, right away, at the end, or never. And other people actually have a strategy about when they're going to pay taxes on their investments. Sometimes it's optimal to pay it when you put it in. Sometimes it's optimal to pay it when you take it out. Sometimes we have investments where you don't do it on either end. We like those. But I have the left side of the stage and the right side. And you'll see the visual learners in the room will actually talk to you afterwards, maybe that night, maybe when they get to your office and say, I want to be over there. They'll actually point to the spot where you were when you were describing it one of the 2 ways. I think we're actually doing it that way, and we want to do it that way. And so creating a contrast between the right way and the wrong way, having a plan and not having a plan, working with somebody you trust versus working with somebody who just is a cookie cutter approach. You can create all these contrasts, and spatially with your movement is the way to do that. The other reasons to create a contrast are to show the passage of time. If you're telling a story and it starts when you're a child and then you get older and then now you're the age that you are, you can kind of move across the stage to show that. And the third reason to move on stage is to switch topics. When you switch from your first topic to your second topic, you should move to a different spot. And then when you switch from your second topic to your third topic, you should move to a different spot. So, some people move a lot, some people move a little. My goal for you is that you would move with purpose. When you move, you know why you're moving. Oh, I moved over here to bring people over to a new topic. Or I moved forward on the stage because I was going to be a little bit vulnerable at this point, and I want to be close to them with nothing between us. Or I moved here to create this contrast so they can see the wrong way to do it and the right way to do it. If you're going to move with purpose.
That's great. Okay, second presentation thing I want to ask about. And this was a topic this morning, and so it's top of mind, but it was someone asked about, hey, do you recommend using PowerPoint, a whiteboard, props? What do you use there? And maybe just, because I know that's a big topic back and forth with advisors too. So.
It is. And so the first thing I would say is that all great presentations need visuals. Over half your audience are visual learners, and you're not going to engage with that half of the audience if you just speak to them. They're not auditory learners. And so you do need some sort of visuals. What I want you to think about, though, is that you have options. And you don't have to choose. That's the good news. So PowerPoint, or what we call prepared visuals, is your first option. They're made ahead of time and they never change during your presentation. If a new topic pops into your head, you can't add a slide in the middle of your presentation. So that's one way to do visuals. And if you're drawing the same thing every time on a whiteboard, you might as well make a slide of it because it's the same every time. Just make a prepared visual. The second option is what we call a live visual. That would be a flip chart or a whiteboard, and you create it as you go. So if you're going to let the audience suggest a scenario, or if it kind of changes every time over the concerns of the audience or what questions the audience has, you can use a flip chart or a whiteboard to kind of record those things or map it out. Or if there's a drawing that you start with and then over time, over your presentation, you add things to it. Sometimes it's fun to do that live in front of the audience. You don't have to choose. There's a lot of presentations that have slides that are prepared, but the speaker is also comfortable going to the whiteboard. The third option, and this is the one that I love, is what we call a three-dimensional visual or a prop, something that you hold. And so I've seen financial advisors have 3 buckets up on front with them where they talk about the 3 different buckets you can put your money into. I've had advisors use a tape measure to show the different lengths of different parts of your retirement journey. And so you can use any visual that kind of represents what you're doing. I wouldn't overplay this. I wouldn't be Carrot Top and throw away everything, 3 seconds with this and 3 seconds with this. But 1 or 2 good props or three-dimensional visuals will capture the audience's attention. It'll freeze the room. Everybody will be focused on you and they will remember it. Don't be surprised at that first appointment if they refer back to that and be like, we have most of our money in the second bucket. And I'm thinking we haven't even touched the third bucket. Do we need help with this? And you're like, yes, you do. Thanks for coming in. I think you don't have to choose. It's not either or. So great presentations often will have slides, a place in the presentation where the advisor draws something, and 1 or 2 props throughout the course of the presentation. So I want you to think wider than slides. I want you to think about visuals and what's the best way to teach what I'm trying to teach, and try to incorporate props in that as well.
Yeah, that's that magician influence there, I see. So
well, I didn't say a black top hat. If you want a top hat, we can talk about that.
So the third topic that was discussed this morning that I thought was extremely valuable and will be for so many people to listen to this podcast. So many of our advisors are now growing and scaling these organizations well beyond just them, to the point where a lot of them don't do appointments anymore, right? They've truly become the CEO of the organization, but oftentimes they're still the face and the voice of the organization, meaning they may still do a lot of the speaking at live events. And just one of the questions that was asked, or I think maybe you even spoke to, was just like some of the specific changes they have to make when they're the one doing the presentation, but not the one that's going to be meeting with the potential client. So would you just share some of the wisdom you shared there this morning?
It's a real point of trust being passed off when one advisor is giving the presentation or doing the radio or television appearance, whatever it is. But when you make your appointment, you don't meet with the person that I saw who actually got me into the appointment. You meet with one of the other associates. So the first part is a language change. And you just have to be really disciplined about not saying I and my during your presentation, that I have been doing this for 25 years. What you want to say is our office has been here in the community for 25 years, and we, my team and I, have been helping families just like yours plan for retirement for 25 years. So you have to be disciplined in your language because you don't want them attached to you. You want them attached to your team and your processes that you have in place. And so you have to be disciplined with your language there. And then the other thing I really recommend is to describe your team as a team of specialists. And so to describe that we've put together a team in our office, we have a person who specializes in taxes and making sure that you're not overpaying in taxes. We have a person who specializes in people who are helping, their parents who have gotten a little bit older, and that's part of your role now is to take care of them. We have somebody in our office who specializes in people who have kids in school and school age who are saving for college and have other goals like that. That way, and then when you describe it, you can say, when you sign up for an appointment, we're going to match you with the person on our team who we believe is the best fit for you. When we write your plan, we all go into a room and sit at a table and we all speak into your plan. So you're getting the combined wisdom of all these experts and specialists. But then there's a reason why I gave the presentation, but you got assigned to one of my associates, because we thought that was the best match for you. Because we've looked at your current situation and we noticed one of the things you're struggling with is you're paying way too much in taxes. We've actually matched you with somebody who's really good at putting together plans where with that in mind in the back of their head. So they're focused on that and they're aware of that. It actually gives you a reason for why I did the presentation and somebody else. It'll lower your cancellation rate. It'll increase your conversion rate from first appointments into clients, because they don't feel like, oh, I got shoved off on the first year, junior, and associate. They're thinking, oh, I got matched with somebody who specializes in situations just like me. It's a little bit like when your doctor sends you to a specialist. You're like, why am I going to the dermatologist? Well, because this person sees things like this all the time. And that's why we sent you there. And so I think if you change your language up front from I and my to we, our, and our team, and then you describe your team as a team of specialists, you're going to have much better luck with that pass off, and you aren't going to lose people along the way.
Yeah, that was great. Appreciate you sharing that. Okay, by the time this episode comes out, we will have already announced this partnership that we're doing with you and your StoryLink software program that we're going to be rolling out to our advisors. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about StoryLink and what we're doing together and how we hope to add a bunch of value to the advisors that we're supporting also.
Yeah, I'm super excited about the StoryLink software. Originally, it started because I was keeping track of all my stories like many of the advisors. Funny things happen. You go to a restaurant and funny things happen. You're at a family reunion and things happen. And you're like, I should use this in my presentation. So you jot it down on a Post-it note or a napkin, and then the wind blows and it's gone, or you leave it in your car. And so somebody gave me a story journal once, and that worked for a while, but it was never with me. If I was at work, my story journal was at home, or if I was at the restaurant, so I'd jot it down on a Post-it note or a napkin. And I thought, why isn't there one spot to keep track of all of your stories? And I have a spot for my photos, and I have a spot for my music. So we looked all over for one and we couldn't find one. So we created StoryLink. And what StoryLink is, one place for you to keep track of all of your stories. And it's organized in a way that it's actually organized by what stories go in what part of your presentation. So if it's an opening story that connects with people, there's a place for that. If it's a teaching story that would teach one of the concepts that you teach in your content, there's a place for that. And if it's an inspirational story that would get people to take action and sign up for an appointment, there's a place for that. And then, you can enter your stories, and then you can push one button and it kind of prints out your presentation for you, because it says, I want to start with this story, I want to teach with these stories, I want to close with this story. And printing out your script is just pressing one button. The great news is, because we've partnered together, that we've loaded it up with best practice from Advisors Excel advisors and best practice examples. So we've got a video library that's exclusive to Advisors Excel advisors. We've got best practice examples. So if you're looking for an opening story that's an analogy story, like the Disney story that I told before, that story is actually in the StoryLink software. If you don't have an opening story, there's an example from a pull-down menu like the Disney story for fear, overwhelm, and lack of a roadmap. That story's there. You can kind of just plug it in. We've got I believe statements, closing tactical stories to tell to get people to take action. It's all kind of built into the software so that you don't lose all these things that are happening that would be great in your presentation, so that you can dial in your presentation and pick the most effective stories. And we've really tried to simplify the process of putting together a better presentation, along with showing best practice of what's happening.
Yeah, I'm excited. There will be no excuse for advisors with us not to be great when they're in front of an audience.
Absolutely. And we've seen people who are using StoryLink, just their conversion rate goes up, but more importantly, or equally importantly, their no-show rate into that first appointment, the cancellation rate goes down, and the conversion from first appointment into clients goes up as well.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I'd love for you to talk about, you do a training where advisors can come. I say advisors, anyone really who wants to be better. Scott and I were talking about that. He had just been to Milwaukee and spent some time with you. I've been up to that event. I don't know, probably 100 plus of our advisors have been through that event too. Maybe just talk about that, kind of helping people build that signature talk and what you do around that.
Yeah, there's lots of ways that we help people. Within the StoryLink software, there's actually a button that allows you to just get one review of your seminar. So you can send in a video of your seminar and get a review that way. We also do hold a 2-day workshop in Milwaukee where our team of coaches, we have a team of specialists.
Yeah.
We have a humor specialist, a body language specialist, a team of specialists who will help you storytelling specialist who will help you put together the perfect high converting presentation. We work with financial advisors every single month at that workshop and writing great high converting talks that don't change your personality, don't have you stand up there pretending to be somebody that you're not, fits with your audience and your community and your part of the country, so that you're not just giving somebody else's presentation or pretending to be somebody else. But the end result of it will be a talk that converts, a talk that every time you give it, you get clients out of it, and a talk that doesn't feel salesy, doesn't feel pushy, that you'll be confident giving, and you know that every time you do it, you'll be having an impact in your community because you're not going to be helping people a little. You're going to be helping them a lot when they become clients.
Yeah, it was great. I remember going there. It's been years ago now. It's probably even pre-COVID, and just it was a wide. There was a small group there, but one was an Instagram kind of influencer.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, there were just a lot of different people there, and so
it's great that we have a variety of people there, including financial advisors, because there's going to be plenty of people there who are going to raise their hand and say, "I don't know what happened in 2008, and I don't know what asset allocation is. I just know I got my money in different accounts. I don't know if all these accounts are good ones or not. Can you help me with that?"
It was good. So I said that a little. So advisors should go, but anyone who is speaking on a stage should for sure go to that. Okay, I want to ask you a few lightning round questions just here to wrap up at the end. So we ask them at the end of every episode. So I'll start with this one. Going back to just, let's say, COVID, the start of COVID, I think it made people look at things different or question things. Is there one lesson that you feel like you learned over these past few years that you'll carry forward for the rest of your life?
It's going to sound weird, but I think the biggest lesson I've been focusing on in the last few years is to stop looking forward. There have been periods in my life, like when my kids were in diapers, I was like, oh, I can't wait for them to get out of diapers. And then they were in car seats, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait for them to get out of car seats. And then I was driving them around to all these sporting events, and I was like, I can't wait until they get their driver's license. And I think I spent a lot of time in my life looking forward to the next phase. And I think there's people who do that right now. Like, I'm working at a job I hate right now, but one day.
Yeah.
Or I'm working hard now, but when I retire, then I'll enjoy life and have fun. And what I've really been thinking about in the last few years is stop looking forward and just enjoy the phase of life that you are in now. Just love and have fun. And you see people doing that, and you're like, why is that person doing the same thing I'm doing, but they're having a whole lot more fun? And the answer is they're not looking forward to when this is over and I get to enjoy life. They're enjoying life right in the phase that they're in right now.
Yeah, well, that's great advice. As someone, I told you, we dropped our first child off at college a few weeks ago. That one hit me a lot too, just to enjoy the moment you're in for sure, because they go fast.
They do.
So, okay, second question. Obviously, you're maybe the best presenter I've ever seen. What is it that took you from being good to great?
Probably what takes somebody from good to great is their ability to look at what they're doing and change. There's a lot of people who present the same way they presented 5 years ago. And if you look back at your seminars 5 years ago or your presentations 5 years ago and you're like, oh, it's pretty much the same one I'm giving right now, you've stopped learning and you've stopped growing. And it's not easy. Nobody likes watching themselves on video. But if you have the people who are around you watching in the right way, watching for when the audience is engaged and when they're not. If you're spending time as a student of the game, being coached, watching best practice videos, I think you're going to see there are at least some things that you could change. And I'm not telling anybody to throw away their whole presentation and adopt a whole new way of presenting. I'm telling you there are small changes that you can make that will make a huge difference in your conversion rates. And you need to be willing to make those changes.
I think the best people I've seen in anything tend to be students of the game. Yep. So for a third question, is there anything you're doing for your own personal growth and development this year that you're excited about, maybe something new or challenging?
From a personal standpoint, this is the year that I'm intentionally spending time with people I strongly disagree with. I think one of the things that's happened in our country and one of the things that's happened, and around me at least, is we just hang out with people who agree with us.
Yeah.
We hang around with people who either go to the same church that we do or believe the same things politically that we do or even professionally in the world of speaking, like who agree with me and think I'm the greatest thing there ever is in the world of speaking. And what I've really tried to do in this year and in the next 12 months is schedule time, intentional time, whether that's going out to lunch or going to an event, or just hanging out with people who I know disagree with me politically, don't go to a church like my church, don't agree with everything or even anything that I say about speaking. And every time I do that, I have more context into why they believe what they believe, and I learn and I improve my practices in all areas, because I haven't just surrounded myself with people who are like, we got this right and they got this wrong. I'm spending time with people who I think have it wrong. And, in the end, we probably get together and realize both of us have some of this wrong and both of us have some of this right.
That's really cool. It's something I've been talking a little bit about. I've tried to do that a lot also. I think one of the things that I've maybe observed, and I'd be curious just to hear what you've learned, just because I do think this is important with everything going on in our country right now, is a lot of times those people have a life experience that has shaped their opinions. And had I had those same life experiences, I would probably have a very similar opinion. And that's just probably been the biggest takeaway I've had, is like their life experiences have shaped the way they see things, and they have a different life experience than me. But just curious if you've, and it makes them so much more human, and like I understand why they think the way they think, when I hear those life experiences. So just curious if you've seen anything or had any observations in that.
I just finished up a year of coaching with a leadership coach whose basic mantra was, you never have all the context. Like, you're looking at somebody and judging them. You're looking at somebody and saying, they are idiots for thinking this way.
Yeah.
And the answer is, you never have all the context of their life. You do not know what they've been through. And even sometimes your best friend, sometimes your sister, like, you do not have all the context here. And so I just think it lowers the hate. It lowers the volume. It lowers the vitriol. The world would be a better place if everybody would make a conscious effort to spend time with people they vehemently disagree about, not to argue with them, to learn from them, to listen to them, to get more of the you will never have all of the context, but to get more of the context. And I just think that is a problem in our country right now. And personally, that's what I'm trying to do to help me not get into this bubble where everybody I hang around with agrees with me. Geographically, we've already done it. We've moved across the country. We've moved into communities. We've moved into subdivisions to be by people like us. So this has to be an intentional effort, because it's not happening by chance anymore. We shop at the store with people who shop like us. We eat at restaurants with people who eat like us. So you have to make an intentional effort to do this. And that's my effort.
Cool. I like that. Okay. The fourth question. What is the one book that you have recommended most to other entrepreneurs, leaders, business owners?
The book that I recommend that most people haven't heard of is a book called Margin by Richard Swenson. Margin is a book that talks about building margin into every aspect of your life. You should build margin into your time, and don't overpack your days, because you will bump into people who need your help and need your ear and need your heart and need your prayer. And if your schedule is scheduled every minute all day, you do not have time to stop and be with that person. You should build margin into your finances, so that when you see an opportunity or a need or something happens, like 2008, that's when the market went down a whole lot in 1 year, I'm told. You have margin. You have margin built in. You should build margin into your schedule. You should build margin into your health. You should build margin. So it's a book that has had one of the biggest impacts on me. I build margin into my day. I have blocks of appointments, and they give examples of doctors who are scheduled from morning to night, but they build in these dummy appointments, these blank appointments, which gives them a chance to catch up or just catch their breath or just eat lunch. So they have these blocks of time where there's nothing. So if they get behind, they get caught up. They have margin in their finances where they only spend 90% of what they had allocated to spend. So they have this extra 10% in case there's a need that arises. It's a practical book. It's a book that is filled with just real practices that you can do to build margin into every aspect of your life. And it's life-changing. It really is.
That's
a good
awesome.
It's
a great one. Haven't had that recommended yet, so a new one for everyone that listens. Okay, final question. Best piece of advice that you've ever received?
I'm torn on this one. The great philosopher Dory in Finding Nemo said, just keep swimming, which I'm a huge fan of, because I think sometimes the person who wins is the person who just keeps coming back and getting back up and just keeps swimming. But I'm gonna have to come in on the side of my mom here. My mom said, don't just be good, be amazing. And what she meant by that was, if you're going to do something, do it with excellence, do it with pride, do it with effort, do it well. And I think that applies to everything that we've talked about here.
Yeah.
Your advisors who are doing presentations, maybe you've been doing for a long time, maybe you do 3 a week and you're a little tired of them. but do them with excellence. Do them and do them well. Those people who are coming aren't coming to the 153rd seminar that you've done. They're coming to the first seminar that they've seen you do. And give them your best. Don't just be good that night. Be amazing. And I think there's not that big of a difference between good and amazing. If you a little extra preparation, a little extra study, a little extra coaching, and you can dial this in and go from good to amazing. And that's what I would hope everybody would do.
That's great, Pat. Appreciate the time today as always. Obviously, advisors with us are going to see and hear a lot from you, but just for those that aren't, what's the best way for people to kind of follow your journey, connect with you, any of those great things?
Yeah, the best place is at the website, storylink.com. That's STORYLANQ, storylink.com.
Awesome, Pat. Appreciate it. As always, the value add and just, I would say the way you do it, teaching people to be amazing is a great, great part of that. And we need people to be amazing today. So thanks for the time as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.